Hey, happy Thursday, you guys. It is Lisa Alexander, founder and executive director of Stand Up Survivor. It is a Thursday night live. So we're duplicating our lives this month because it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we want to get as much content out to you as possible. So come on in here, say hello, tell us where you're tuning in from, and I will do my housekeeping duties like I always do. Um, I have someone special with me today, but I'm not going to introduce her. So hold up. I'll tell you in a second. Let me. All right, that was done. Hey, Karen. Hey, come on in here. So today I am so excited. Hey, Tanya, let us know where you guys are tuning in from. I love to see where everyone is. Today I'm excited about my guest that I have today. This is Miss Janelle Carrasco. Hey,
Yes,
Janelle.
roll those R's.
Yes, Carrasco. And yes, and Janelli, I'm so excited because Janelli was my advocate when I was in the chaotic time of leaving my abusive marriage. And so she was able to journey with me, and she's still with me today, 10 years later. So I'm excited to have her. So we're gonna start in like 30 seconds. Everything is good, Karen. How are you? All right, so Janelli, welcome. So excited that you're here.
Yes, glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So introduce yourself, please, before we get started, so everyone knows who they're talking to today.
Okay, well, I am Janelle Carrasco, and I am a social worker. I've been in the nonprofit field for, oh gosh, 12 years now. So with an emphasis on domestic violence, and yeah, I'm just here to educate and empower whoever is watching today.
Yes. Awesome. I'm so excited to have you. So, like I shared, this is my advocate. And I met Janelli in 2010 when I was leaving my abusive marriage. I was still in it, but I was at the point of leaving. And so I remember, I always tell a story because I love it, but I remember going to her class. I reached out to Harbor House in Central Florida, and they connected me with Janelli. She worked there, and she helped, survivors. And so I walked in her class and I was like, God's going to save my marriage. And she looked at me and she said, okay. Meanwhile, I really wasn't expecting that kind of reaction. I was expecting like a reaction was like, are you serious? Why would you want to stay in your marriage? It's abusive. What are you thinking? And not realizing that the answer that Janelli gave me was exactly what I needed. It kind of like, it took me aback, you know? So I don't know. You're going to say something, Janelli? You look like you're
No,
about to
no,
say
I'm
something.
listening. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So she was like, I was like, okay. All
Mhm.
right. Well, it's so funny because I don't think people really understand what that journey looks like unless you've been in it.
Right.
And so as I was preparing for tonight, Janelle doesn't know this. I went back into like an old email address with like like my last name and like a couple last names ago. But anyway, I wanted to read this this email that I found that I
Oh
had
my
written to
God.
her back in 2000. I know. It's dated December 2010, and it said we talked, I guess, after class. I said, thanks for our talk today. I said, I appreciate you letting me know that you are available. So for those of you that don't know, we're going to kind of journey through my story and then into DV 101. Okay. So like we talked about today, I would appreciate it more if you would tell me about the housing situation because I needed a place to live for myself and my children.
Mhm.
And I said, I'm willing and looking for work. It's just really having a hard time finding it. I also can't afford childcare and I need to find some, but it would be great. I would be greatly appreciated if you can help me find stability for myself and my children. I feel like I've been hopping from place to place for 6 years and it sucks. Thank you so much for helping me with Christmas toys for my kids. My son is 2 and my daughter is 3. So this was 10 years ago in December.
Oh my
So
God.
she writes back and she says, she goes, it's no problem, Lisa. I will help in whatever way I can. I already let my supervisor know you're looking for housing. I found some stuff for your daughter and I'm finding some stuff for your son. Okay, so that was that. So that was around Christmas time. I'm thinking, I just left my abusive marriage. What am I gonna do? I can't afford gifts for my children. Like, how do I tell a 2 and 3 year old there's no Christmas?
Right, right.
And so so she finds me these toys and she says, She blew me away. I said, Janelle, when I tell you we got a Christmas tree, and it was the best Christmas to this day, and I will always say that my children have ever had. There were just so many gifts under the tree. And so she did the work and put in the work to help me provide Christmas for my children. And I wrote December 23rd, I said, you blew me away with those gifts today. I am beyond grateful, and words can't express my gratitude. So let me just pause and say, like, I tell my story a million times and I don't cry. When I talk about specific people, especially this woman right here, it's a wrap.
So we start crying already. Gosh.
I said, it stinks not to be able to provide my own kids. It stinks not to be able to provide for my own kids, but I know that this is just a season in my life. And soon I'll be back on my feet and I'll be thriving. You blessed me really deeply. Thank you, Janelle. God bless you. She said, oh, you're welcome. Lisa, you're a great person, and you and your kids deserve a happy holidays. You will make it this year. This will be a new year for you, right? So this lady, she's talking to me. I have no reason to believe anything that she says, you know? But one thing about my advocate is that she said she's going to do something, maybe she did. I needed housing, she helped me find it. I needed Christmas for my children, she helped me find it. So hold on. I gotta be more, right? Okay. So she blew us away with that Christmas that year, and it was amazing. So this was the last one. So I don't even know if I printed the date on this one. So I said, hi, Janelle, I'm just up doing some homework, and I got to thinking. I wanted to share with you how grateful I am. I'm humbled, thankful, and overwhelmed with the support and love that Harbor House and you have given me. I'm not sure yet how I can say thank you, but I do know a few things. I know who I am. I no longer live as afraid as I used to. I'm safe. I'm not dead. I still have my children, and I still have my life. I'm graduating from college. Hold on. Sorry. I'm graduating from college. I'm starting my master's degree. I'm emotionally healthy, and I'm happy. These may seem like the simplest things. Hold on. I'm getting it together. But as I look back at where I was this time last year, all I can do is cry because I know where I was and I know where I could have been. Thank you, Janelle. I love and appreciate you more than you'll ever know. So I had to pull those up because I was like, wait a minute. So when I just love that, because when I look back at this, you guys, this is the height of of leaving the abusive relationship. I still didn't have anything. I was still trying to figure life out. But I knew that I was safe. I had my children and I was still alive. And so that's who you guys are looking at today, my advocate. Ooh, you ugly crying.
I know. You always do this to me as much as I try to be like, nah, I got this. It's just, you know why, Lisa? Because you are like the epitome of somebody who started from the bottom, now we here, right? Like,
yeah, you're right.
You came in through those doors and you were open to receiving. I think that's the other part of it, right? Like sometimes we get so stuck in situations that it's just like, nah, that's not for me. No, I can't. No, you know, you've been through so much that those are the only words that you know. But you were open to receiving. You were open to getting change. And, you know, that's when the doors just started to fling wide open to you. And it's just like to know everything that you've been through. And like you said, you were like, well, I'm not going to get a divorce. And I was like, that wasn't an option, right? You know, and so I was like, that's fine. You don't have to get a divorce. And then months down the road, as you're becoming more empowered and you're starting to be educated on the signs and everything, you're like, Janelle, I'm at the courthouse and I'm signing the divorce papers. And I'm just like, okay, are you sure that's what you want to do? You know, and you had this like go-getter, I know what I have to do now. And, you know, to be able to go back to school and get your master's degree and be working on your PhD, like, that's just like, wow. While you have children in the midst of that. And in the housing program, like, you were doing everything that you needed to do. And you always said, like, I remember every time we used to talk when the rent was due and, you know, you paid your portion and whatnot, that you're like, I swear this is not a handout, it's a hand up. And it's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're doing the work too. And you got to give yourself credit for that. And I think that's a lot of what happens with survivors is that you don't give yourself credit for the steps that you're taking.
Yeah.
Because you're still in that thought process of, I don't deserve this. How could I be taking this next step? But you absolutely deserve all the best things that are still out there for you. And that's why every time you say it, you make me cry.
I love that you say that, though. There's a couple key things you said talking about doing the work, because you have to do the work. And I think when you said being open, because our minds, once we come out of an abusive relationship, we're just so confused. We have no sense of self. We have no idea what's next, what's going on.
Right.
And we're so lost. And people they're always ask me, how did you do it? What I said, I just started. I just had to fight for myself. I had to find my voice. And it's like, even when I look at our emails back in it's like I slowly began to find me again. You know, and I walked in your class like I didn't want to get a divorce. I wanted God to save my marriage. I'll never forget. God was intricate in the entire process for me. I went to the courthouse to file for divorce. Didn't know what I was doing. Like, didn't have money, $500 for divorce. And someone at the courthouse worked there that I knew. And she's like, and took care of me from beginning to end of filing a divorce, you know? And it's like every time along the way, God will place people in your life. And he did that for me. Right. And as I was reading, I knew I didn't want to stay stuck where I was. I wanted to be able to provide for my children. I didn't want to feel like somebody was handing me stuff all the time. I wanted to work for it, you know? But it never made me feel like I was begging you for anything or asking you to do things for me. You know what I mean? And I think that's the joys of having an advocate. And so this lady has walk with me through everything, help me get my resume together, help me, you know, I went back to school, you know, this lady has journeyed between my children and dating and figuring that thing out, and was at my wedding. And let me say, I think she cried at my wedding as much as I cried. Yes. She was like crying. Boo crying. But I think that I'm now an advocate myself, and I look, and when someone turns around to say thank you, that is the biggest gift I think as an advocate that you can get, is that thank you, because you help so many people and you don't hear that all the time.
Right. Oh, Lisa, thank you.
And so go, you're delayed. No, go, you're delayed. Go.
Oh, I'm delayed. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. No, I just wanted to let people know that even if you're still in a domestic violence relationship, like, you're still a survivor. You're still allowed to call yourself a survivor, because you are. Every single day that you wake up and make the decision to figure out what your next step is, or literally just survive that day, you are a survivor. And eventually you will get to that point where you do become a thriver, like in your situation, Lisa. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I mean, I agree with that. I know sometimes people throw around the victim and survivor word, but I think the same thing. I feel like you woke up in that day and you survived that situation, that experience, that beating, that isolation. You're a survivor. You survived and you made it to the next day. So I call whether someone's in the situation or out of the situation, you're a survivor because you made it to the next day. And that, and I love how you said, Janelle, like, give yourself credit for where you are every step of the way, you know? Whether it's you can feel free to inbox us at any time. That's fine. So we're gonna talk to the people a little bit today about the basics of domestic violence. And you know, Janelle, I didn't know what domestic violence was. I was so naive. You know, I didn't know what it looked like. So when it happened in my own home, I was so confused and I didn't know what to do. Right. So let's talk a little bit about what domestic violence looks like. So of course we have. I'm going to show it up on the screen real quick. The power and control wheel. Y'all see that? I'm sorry, I'm still sniffling. So the domestic violence, sometimes it's cyclical, but sometimes it's not, Janelle. So tell us a little bit about that.
So there, you see the domestic violence control wheel. And the thing is that not everybody goes through every single thing, but the majority of survivors, when the research was done, showed that the majority of them did go through a lot of what was on there. So that's why they were able to come up with that wheel, because there's common themes amongst survivors of domestic violence, right? So there's the isolation, emotional abuse, obviously the physical abuse, but that's not always in all relationships. You know, there's mental, there's financial. That is a big component, financial abuse. And even though it's the hardest to kind of to overcome, because if you are depending on your partner to be able to pay for the bills and whatnot, or you could be the one working and they're the ones taking all your money. So, you know, that rears its head in a very different way for many different people. But financial abuse, emotional, physical, mental, you know, if there's children and involved in the relationship, the abuser will use the children against you, you know, and try to blackmail you. If you go to the police or if you go try to get help, you know, they're going to take the kids away. Well, if you've never been involved in any kind of legal issues, you don't know whether that's true or not. You don't know if somebody comes into your home that they're going to remove your children. Although the majority of the time they're there to try to help you and get you out of that situation. So.
And it's funny too, because I know on the power control wheel, there's that honeymoon phase. And
Yeah.
I didn't go through the honeymoon phase. I wasn't doused with apologies and doused with, you know, flowers and gifts. He skipped that phase completely. My ex-husband did. It wasn't that. It was totally skipped. It was like, it was my fault. And I, in turn, ended up apologizing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so for me, that phase was completely skipped. And so this is, hey, Pilar, hey, this is DV 101. So there's also an immigrant power and control wheel that I will share.
Yes.
If you're dealing with green card issue or legal issues to be in the country, there's a whole nother wheel for you, because the abuser will try to manipulate you in other ways. Maybe they're a citizen.
Absolutely.
Not.
In that same regard, Lisa, there's safety measures in place for immigrants that are going through domestic violence, because you come into this country and you still have a right as a human being to be treated with dignity and respect. So if somebody is abusing you, thinking that they can use your status against you, they are mistaken. There's the Violence Against Women Act that is there to support those survivors in particular.
Absolutely. And there are options available. Yes, please feel free to put questions in the comments. We will get to them as soon as we can. And so another thing I wanted to talk about just now was when you talked about financial abuse. And so my ex-husband, he was a breadwinner, very smart, worked in IT, still does. He's just a smart guy, you know, and which made it even worse for me, because he was able to hack into my computer and my phone and the internet, everything like that.
Right.
But one thing about them, I remember we went to Walmart one time. And this is when we were isolated. I was living in Alabama, away from my immediate family. Mm-hmm. And so isolation had already taken place. And I needed personal hygiene products. And I said, he's like, so? He's like, nope. And he wouldn't give it to me. And I just remember standing in the parking lot, totally crushed, feeling like, what am I going to do? Right. Am I going to call my parents and tell them I can't afford deodorant and hygiene products? Right. You know what I mean? And so he used his ability to work and my inability to work. I had 2 infants, you know, I didn't work. And he used that against me. Right. And it happens like that all the time. I know a lot of survivors who do work and their partner doesn't work, the abuser doesn't work, and they take advantage of their money and they're still broke, even though it's working. Right, absolutely.
You know, and the other part, Lisa, that you mentioned that I forgot to throw in there is that technology. I mean, the way that people can stalk and abuse you through all these different channels. And that's also one of the harder ones to prove because of spoofing and, you know, changing phone numbers and emails and whatnot. And so, but when you're with somebody, they have access to the majority of your information, right? They know your name, they know your mother's name, they know your social security number. And that's the first place that they go. Somebody said, you know, that they mess up their credit. Absolutely. That makes it harder for them to leave the relationship. You know, so those components that people don't think about.
Yeah, and they know that, you know, if you don't financially, if you can't leave, they know that, whether you're the breadwinner or they help with the children. And it's funny because as I was reading back the emails that I had written to you, I was like I want to work, but it's hard for me to find a job, and I want to have safe housing, but it's hard for me to find it. You know, and I want to go back to school. So all of these things, you know, they're barriers, and they're real barriers for survivors of domestic violence that want to leave. So someone asked a question earlier that said, how do you find peace of mind while going through like getting vindication? So let me go back. I did call the police before. And when they did come in, they told me that they were going to take, I had a baby, just a girl. And they said they were going to take her if I call them again. And I never called the police after that because I was afraid that they were going to take my child. And And to me, it wasn't worth it. I would have rather have endured the abuse than to lose my child. And she was a baby, like in the arms, baby. And so it made me afraid to call the police. Then now I'm being abused, but I'm afraid to call the police, you know? And so that one was really, really difficult. But I tell you, people, we want justice. Survivors of domestic violence, we want justice. We want child support. We want spouse support. We want the help. But the truth of the matter sometimes is, Janelle, we may not get that. But we can't let it affect our peace of mind. Like someone just asked,
that's hard.
Peace of mind. It's hard. It sucks. There's no way around it. But you still have to be in control of finding your peace of mind. You can't let them or the situation decide if you can have peace of mind.
Right. That's the part, you know, the justice side of it. So it's really hard to get. Am I freezing again?
You're back.
Is it spotty? Okay, sorry guys, I apologize. But you know, justice for many comes in different ways. So you got, I guess, you know, part of that, like seeking peace while you go through the justice, like what is your definition of justice in your particular relationship or situation? You know, because you might not ever get in front of a judge and see that part of it. But being able to say, you know what, like you said earlier, I walked away with my life and with my children. Everything else is stuff that I can get and accomplish down the road. You know, so you have to define it for yourself individually, because every person's situation and relationship is different.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I know for me, I mean, I left our house. I literally left with only whatever I could pack in my car. And it was at one point when I said, well, can I get the things? He told me he sold them. And so there was nothing that I could get back that I owned in that house. And it was devastating for me because I had family heirlooms and gifts and stuff like that I just ended up losing. But the most important thing I left with was my life and my children. And so did it suck? Yeah. Did I lose it? Yeah. Did we, you know, when we moved into our house that Janelle helped us get, they helped us, we actually moved into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And everything was like, you know, garage sale furniture, you know, but it didn't matter. It was mine. It was ours. Right. We were safe. You know what I mean? So none of that, it was ours. None of that mattered. I had my life and I had my children. So someone made a comment that they feel like there's no justice when your abuser is a police officer. And you're probably very right about that, especially, I don't know your specific situation, but especially dealing with law enforcement officers that are abusive. That is very challenging. We talked about that a few weeks ago.
Right.
And even ministers or pastors, people who are in high positions of power, oftentimes you do not get the justice that you so desire. And that's really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And somebody else mentioned like sensitivity training too. Like, sorry for the delay, guys. I really apologize. I'll do better next time, I promise. But you know, definitely, I think that from back then, the police have become more educated because it takes agencies like Stand Up Survivor, Harbor House, you know, all those different domestic violence centers to be able to go into those places and educate those folks on, you know, the survivor is scared. You're showing up to the house, and even though she wants your help, the abuser is going to retaliate in some way, shape, or form as soon as the police leave. You know, so to go and show up to the house and be like, hey, the next time you call, you know, we're just going to arrest both of you. Like, that's not doing anything. And we've been able to teach that to officers. And so they have been getting better in that regard.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, Pilar, you made a really good point. And I think ongoing education, because of course you have police officers that leave, police officer, you know, and new people coming on the force all the time. So that ongoing training is really, really important. So I remember we were living in an apartment one time, and I don't know if any survivors can relate, but like you pass something and you have these moments where you remember what life was like here. And so I actually had to go back to that place and that complex and kind of sit in our old apartment and just cry, write, and heal. Because every time I passed there, it was really, really difficult. But I remember one time he was he was tearing me up. He was going on me, like just punching me and hitting me. And so I just ran. I had no shoes on. I grabbed my phone and I ran out. And the apartment complex was kind of low. So I was running up a hill, just running, and he was chasing me. And I ran. It was nighttime. And I hid behind at the, what do you call it? The main office building at the complex. And I
like the leasing office?
The leasing office. And I was barefoot and I was hiding behind the bushes. And I remember I caught her and I said, please come get me, come get me. And of course, Jasmine, she came and got me. But I'll never forget moments like that where you are just devastated and terrified and don't know what to do and literally just leave with the clothes on your back to get to safety. And I ended up staying years after that, but that was just one of the situations where, like, of course my best friend came to my rescue, slept on her couch for a few weeks, but I did end up going back. But it's one of those times where you're like, you just kind of go through it.
Right. And Lisa, I think people need to hear that part again, that after all that, like, you were still in it for years. Not that your best friend came and you left and that was it was done. Because it can take up to 7 times on average for a woman to go back and forth, because there's just so much as a woman survivor you can lose. And, then they try to shower you back, or people try to talk you back into the relationship because they're just tired of hearing your situation. And then that's where the isolation starts to come in. But all that to say that just because you leave in a moment, for some, that might be the last moment, and that's great, and they don't ever go back. But for others, the majority of others, it's like, yeah, I stayed in it for years after that incident, but you did what you had to do, and to build up that strength, it was that was your time to go. That's when it's your time. When it's your time. Lisa, you knew when it was your time. You knew the moment that you were like, you know what? I've been going back and forth for years. I've come and I've left. But there was that one incident or that one moment that was just like, that's it. Yep. No more.
Yep.
And that's how people compare themselves.
I remember we were living in our house here in Orlando. And meanwhile, let me just tell you, I passed that house every day to take my daughter to daycare. And there have been times when I just kind of drive by and I sit there and I make sure, because I don't want it to be a trigger for me,
Right.
But I remember the violence just kept getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where I would cower down in a corner like this while he's throwing blows at my head. I always made sure to protect my face, because you can see bruises on my face. And so I wanted to make sure that when I, me and my big smile, I go out and I smile, you don't see what's really going on. But then I realized, wait a minute, this is getting really, really bad. I remember this one time he picked up the children. We're in the guest room. He had chased me into the guest room, put the children on the bed, and just had me hemmed up in the corner like this, and we're just going blows. And I remember I ran out that night and I went to someone's house and I spent the night there on a single bed with my 2 children. Bawled myself, barely slept that, and I thought to myself, this is getting really, really bad. He is going to kill me. Like, I knew it, Janelle. And I always say, whether intentionally or unintentionally, this man was going to kill me.
Right.
Because it didn't start off like that. He didn't start off hitting me. He hadn't hit me until I got pregnant with him 2 years into the Yeah. And so when that started, I was like, it got worse and worse. I said, he's going to kill me. Like, I know it, And so that's when I had made that decision around that time. Like, I got to do something else. And that's when I started looking up domestic violence, abuse, marriage, divorce, and stuff like that. But yeah, I had gone back. Oh my goodness. I had 2 kids with him at that point. We've been married, I don't know how many years at this. And I went back every time. And I remember my mom asking me, she said, does he hit you? And I was like, no, why would you ask me? Like, Mom, stop. I cut it out. Like, I blew her off. I was like, why would you ask me that? Mothers know, first of all.
Right. Mothers intuition.
Exactly. I tell my kids, I know everything y'all do. But mothers, and I never even told, like, even after I left, my parents didn't know about the abuse until I filed for divorce, because they couldn't understand. What do you mean you're getting divorced? Right. And I had to say, it's abusive, it's violent. And I remember it was a Harbor House Purple Door luncheon, one of their fundraisers, and I was pregnant with Joyce. So this was probably 2016. And I spoke at the event. And it's the first time that my mother heard my story the whole time.
Yes.
And I got a standing ovation. Over 500 people in the room were standing up, clapping. And my mother sat down, and then I got down to my seat, and she's bawling, crying. She's bawling because that's the first. And I was already nervous, but I wanted her to be my guest at the event. And so the first time ever she had heard the story, and people were coming up to her, talking to her, patting her on the back, saying hello, whatever. And I just felt so bad for her in that moment, but I thought I had to speak my truth.
Right.
I couldn't no longer not speak my truth anymore.
Right.
You know, and I know that as a mother, that had to be very painful to know that your daughter went through that, you know?
Well, and even like what you were saying before about it didn't start off with any physical indicators, right? Like some relationships, yes, they're physical off rip. Other relationships, you don't see the physicality of it at all. And other relationships, it progressively gets worse. But I remember you telling me, and again, that must be that mother's intuition thing. I remember you telling me that he hadn't been physical with you. He punched the wall that was near you, but he had never laid a hand on you.
Yep.
And I said, okay. And so, you know, as you slowly started to disclose, it's, you know, because I think the other part too, Lisa, and for those out there, is that when you're looking at your partner in that moment, it's like, you're trying to remember, you're trying to save what you have because you're trying to remember those good times that you had with that person, right? Because it wasn't always bad.
Nope.
It wasn't always bad. There were moments that you're like, this is him. This is the guy I fell in love with. Where is he? I'm going to hold on to it. This is why I stay in the relationship, right? Because I love him and I know that that person's going to come back. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate truth is that that's just a glimpse of what he was, maybe, and things were there, or you just never knew the real him. You know, those true colors start to show. So another reason why it's so hard to leave sometimes.
Because we don't want the relationship to end. We just want the abuse to stop. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions, is because we want our marriage, we want our relationship, we want to be with our partner. We just want them to stop the abuse. Right. And we think, we can cook good enough, or be good in the bedroom enough, or do this good enough to make them stop the abuse, not realizing that their abuse has nothing to do with us. They are going to abuse the person after you. And when I came to the point when I realized that it's not a Lisa thing, that thing freed me so much. It's not me, it's them, right. And he hasn't changed very much to this day. And we've been divorced 2020. We've been divorced 10 years. And so it's not a Lisa thing, it's a them thing. And so when I decided to take the responsibility off of myself, I was able to free myself from that. Yeah, I absolutely agree. No matter what you did, because they set the bar, right? Here's the bar. Lisa, if you could just do this or be good enough, if you reach this bar, they will always raise the bar. Always.
You can never, it's an illusion. It's an illusion. Okay, it's an illusion that it's right there, when in reality, like they keep moving it back, and you're never going to reach it, because if you reached it, they would lose their control. And that is what abuse is about. It's about power, and it's about control. And the minute that you are able to be good enough and do what they say, reach that accomplishment, like, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my control over this person. Yeah. So they will never allow you. Yeah. Right.
And it is enough to make you lose your mind. I literally thought I'm gonna lose my mind. Like, literally. Like, I remember, like, I had no idea who I was when I left. When I got free, I was a shell of a person. And that's their goal. Their goal is for you not to have a voice, for you not to be empowered, for you not to know who you are, so that they can control you like a puppet on a string. Right. But the moment you come into yourself and you realize, wait a minute, something's not right, and you start to become who you are and find your voice, that's when they're like, uh-oh. And so, and I always say, I probably say this all the time, but it's like, I told my ex-husband, and I talk about it, and he lives life every day, and I say, the moment I lie, stop me, but until then, leave me alone, because this is my journey. I knew exactly what I endured, and until then, you can't tell me that I'm lying. This is all true. Right. So I'm going to share my story, and I'm going to use my voice.
Right, because that's the thing too, is that you're telling your truth and the truth of what's going on. And in their mind, that narcissistic personality, they're twisting everything. They're the victim. You know, so it's just like, again, no matter what you say or do, it's never going to be good enough. You're not the victim in all this. It's him. Like, because you didn't cook that food the right way, that's why he did what he did. No, sir, that's not how this works. You know, like that's not what it is. But in the mind of a narcissist, that's what they're going to do. They're going to emotionally, and again, you know, thank you so much for everybody who's sharing their story in the comments, because it's, you know, people have to know that there's other people that have gone through this, and it's not always just the physical piece of it. The emotional, the verbal, the mental, those leave deep rooted scars as well. It's not just the physical. And I've had so many survivors that have said, you know, bones heal, and even though I may have a physical scar, like, I can hide that. Those words penetrate your mind. You're worthless, you're stupid, you're dumb, you can't do that on your own, you need me. They penetrate your mind constantly, especially at the point where you've left the relationship and you're alone in your thoughts.
Yes, and your thoughts are their words, and your thoughts are their words.
Yes, because you've been in bondage for so long under this person that their reality, their warped reality, let me take that back. Their warped reality has become your warped reality, and you have to live with that. And so once you're out of it, it's like, how do I reframe all of this? And that's why it's so important to get that help. It's free, y'all. It's free. All DV services are free. You know, so go out there. The 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you know, sometimes the thing too, Lisa, is like, you were blessed that God opened those doors and put people in places. But if it hadn't been a fit, like, there's so many other resources too. I don't want anybody to get discouraged, because I've had people come to me that were like, you know, I almost gave up because the people in a different state, the shelter I went to, the center I went to. Don't give up. Don't let that be the reason that you don't seek help, because you deserve to get help.
Yeah, that's really good. I love how you talk about everyone's not a good fit. And that's true. Just like a good therapist. You might find a therapist, this therapist is not for me. We don't click too well. And that's okay. And some shelters and domestic violence advocacy places offer different services and other ones don't. But don't just give up. You know, people make phrases, no one cares. You know, no one cares, or no one's going to help me. Those are just not true statements. Is it harder sometimes to find the help you need? Absolutely. Sometimes you have to find the help by yourself? Absolutely. But you don't give up. You know, Janelle, I want to touch on something you said just now about how they made these statements. You're not good enough. Someone said, no one will ever love you. No one ever love you like I love you. No one's going to care about you. You don't have any money. You're fat. You're ugly. You're stupid. And I kind of pictured it like, all of those kind of things like a staircase. Because what they did, those things are, you have the ability to turn all those negative words that they gave you into the staircase that takes you exactly where you want to be. And I truly believe that, because you have the power. I'm not going to tell y'all 10 years later that I don't hear or replay some of the things that he has said to me, but I'm telling you, they're not as loud. They're like little whispers, and they're almost laughable, because I know there's no truth
back here, like
yeah, like no, because what happened was I was able to counteract the lies of who he said I was with the truth of who I know I am, the truth of who God says that I am, and I've allowed myself to heal and to process and to allow myself to know who I am all over again.
Right.
And yes,
right. And you know,
they never say sorry. Don't wait for sorry to begin to heal.
Apology. You know? Don't wait for an apology. And the thing too is, Lisa, you know, you mentioning faith was a very big component in your relationship, you know, and it's still a very big component to this day. And they will use that against you as well.
Spiritual abuse.
And people will, spiritual abuse, and people will twist what it says in the Bible, and it's just like God did not intend for a woman to be abused in the relationship. And like you were saying, the truth of who God tells you that you are. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are made in his image. So anything else that a person is saying on the outside, you have the words to contradict and be in that right state of mind of who you really are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And Shan, you made a good point. You need them to become whispers. So I encourage you, you got to replace one thing with the other. You got to take the negative, push those out, but replace it with something positive. Replace the lies that were once told to you with the truth of who you are. And I promise, if you don't know who you are, I get that. Take the time to get to know who you are. And I love to share this too, because I had an epiphany for myself that God loves me more than he hates divorce. I knew that he didn't create me to live in this type of pain. And I knew that me staying married could have killed me. So I would much rather be here as a daughter, as a wife, as a mother, and care for my children than be married and dead. It didn't make any sense. And so I knew that he loved me more than that. And it freed me. It freed me enough to be able to go to that courthouse and mourn the loss of my marriage. And I don't ever want people to get the thought that, oh, well, good, you divorced an abuser, you must be happy now. That's not the way that this works. We love them. At all. That's why we stay.
That's why we stay. If it was that easy, like, we wouldn't be in these situations, right? Like, we'd be like, you know what, I don't like you anymore, I'm done, I'm out. That's not what it is at all. So it's not an easy situation. Just because you get a divorce, just because you leave, it doesn't mean that it stops either. Let me touch base on that, because a lot of survivors are hurt more when they leave the relationship, because once again, you have shown the abuser that you no longer have power and control over me. So to tell a survivor, like, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just go? It doesn't matter. It's the abuser will make it about himself. And we've had survivors who had left the relationship and have been out for months, and he was still stalking her. He was trying to beat her. Like, think about what you've seen in the news recently. Absolutely. So don't, when somebody tells you, why don't you just leave? Let them know, because it doesn't mean it will stop.
Yeah, that's a really, it's not that easy. And I think it's 70%, don't quote me on the statistics, but that's how many get injured or dead after they leave the abusive relationship. And so it's more dangerous when a survivor decides to leave the relationship. That's why safety planning is so important. And we're talking about that on Tuesday, but safety planning is very important. We just say, now, don't get me wrong, there are going to be some incidences where you need to run and save your life in that moment. Okay, don't get me wrong. And that means you need to call 911 and get to safety. But if you're ready and you're thinking and considering leaving, a safety plan is critical to your safety, because abusers, they don't want to lose that power and control. And when they see that you found the strength to leave, they're not going to be willing to let you go that easily. And so your safety and that of your children is paramount. So I want to touch on some things. Oh my goodness, we've been on for almost an hour. I want to touch on some things that happen. So you know what to look for. Now, isolation is a really, really big one. So they try to isolate you from friends and family, separate you. And if you've experienced any of these things, feel free to put it over in the comments. But I know for myself, he got a better job in Alabama. And so we moved to Alabama, and I'm thinking, he's like, no, we need to be away from your family. You guys are too close. We need to have our own life. We're our own family. And we need this time to focus on us. And that sounds beautiful. And can I tell you, Janelle, I hear that from survivors so much. That's like a typical lie.
Yeah. It's just a way to move you away and keep you isolated. But it sounds so great, right? Like, babe, we're going to start a whole new life. And we're gonna have all this money in this beautiful place, and nobody's gonna be able to tell us what we're doing in our relationship. And then you get there, and it's not the fairy tale that he promised. It's the nightmare that you weren't expecting.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. We moved on the top of a mountain, and literally to get down, you had to go straight down. Meanwhile, it was only one car. I mean, he had it. He had taken the phone out of the house. I didn't have I had a cell phone, but he had broken it so many times that by the time I didn't really have a cell phone. He was lucky enough to buy me a new one, I had one, but if not, he always broke them. And so I remember one time, story time, I remember the neighbor, it was like a condo, and I asked the neighbor to take me down the hill to the Dollar General, and I got a plug-in phone. And so that's how I was able to communicate with my parents, let them know, because my mom would be like, I tried to call you, what happened? I'm like, oh, my phone broke. And so I had a computer, but I didn't have access to the computer. And so that was the way that I hid that phone in my kid's closet under their clothes. So when he would go to work, I would take that phone out, plug it in, communicate with my friends and family, and then put it back, never letting anybody know. So he had no idea that I had access to the outside world.
Right.
And so those are some of the things that as survivors of domestic violence, you end up doing just to keep yourself safe. So the isolation that I experienced was on the top of a mountain in a whole nother state, away from people who would be able to recognize the signs of what I was going through.
Yeah.
So that was one of the big things. They try to turn your children against you. They don't let you use the car. Oh, we only need one car.
Right.
I'll take you to work.
Right.
Yeah, I'll take you to work. We don't need to have 2 car payments. I'll pick you up. I'll wait for you. Oh, you don't need to go grocery shopping now. Let me just tell you, Janelle, because of COVID-19, you already know all of this isolation is 10 times as worse because of COVID-19.
Yeah. Unfortunately it is. And then especially because you're already stuck at home, or if you've lost your job, now you don't even have that escape if you were working, so you don't even have the escape of being able to go to work. And everybody's just so short, trying to make sure that they themselves are okay, that you feel intimidated trying to reach out to anybody to tell them what's going on, because, as a collective, we're dealing with a pandemic. And then as an individual, you're dealing with an abusive relationship. And so it has made things so much harder. And isolation is just, that's the quickest way to go through the domestic violence relationship, is because it doesn't look like abuse, right? Like if he's telling you like, why are your friends talking about us? Like they don't even like me. And you start telling your friends like what he's doing, and he's like, oh, they don't even like me, and this, that, and the other. I don't want you talking to them, or I love you too much for you to be hanging out with them. And now he's isolated you in that regard, making you think, somebody used the word love bombing. Yes. Like, oh, it's because he loves me so much. No.
And they know, like, if I can isolate you from family and friends, they know, like, for my mother to ask me, she must have sensed something or seen something. And even my sisters at one point, they were like, what is going on? Is he abusive with you? And I was like, no, because friends and family can see that. Those people that know you can see that. But if they can get you away from those people, they have an opportunity to abuse you at a heightened level. So I always tell survivors that I work with, no, I don't care if they got a new job. No, you don't need to relocate to North Carolina and start over. No, you don't need to move to China. No, don't do it, because this is just a way for them to isolate you. Someone said in the comments, okay, so let's touch on that real quick. Mary talked about therapy, and therapy is not for everyone. Okay, of course, I'm a huge advocate as a therapist. Both of us as therapists, we will encourage you to go to therapy, but that doesn't mean that that's for you. You have to find the thing that works for you for the healing process. And whatever that is, it has to work for you. Don't think that, oh, well, everybody said I should go to therapy. Maybe that's just not for you. Find the thing that is for you and let that take you on your journey to healing. Another thing we talk about too is male privilege. And I know we all know that men and women get abused, but male privilege is a really big one. I'm the man of the house. You be obedient to me. You're submissive to me. I make the money. You make the money. You bring it home and give it to me. They treat you like you're inferior. So they use male privilege as a way to use for power and control. Right. I can't see, you're kind of delayed. I know you're gonna say something. Another thing that is really big in domestic violence is sexual abuse. Your body does not belong to that other person. And so they don't have the right to force you to have sex. And that is something that I experienced personally in my own relationship, because he told me, well, you're my wife, you have to, and you better. And those are some of the things that I personally had to deal with. And I thought to myself, again, crisis of conscience. I'm thinking I have to do these things because he's telling me that I have to. And I'm believing that I have to do these things, not realizing that my body is mine, and rape is not okay. In a marriage, rape is a thing that occurs in marriage, in domestic violence, and it's not okay. And that's something that I didn't know and I didn't learn until after I was out of the relationship.
So to touch base on sexual abuse, there's also substance abuse, right? So even if the survivor never used drugs or alcohol before, that might be something that the abuser has forced on her, or that might be something that she uses as a coping mechanism, to try to numb herself from the pain. So it's something that, even though it might not have existed prior to the survivor being in that relationship, it can develop throughout. And so, when you're seeking help, you want to be transparent and you want to be honest with your advocate, your counselor, your therapist, because we want to be able to help you holistically, right? And that means capturing every component of what you're going through so that we know where to help first, and where you want to start first. But yeah, sexual abuse, substance abuse, all those things.
That's good. I know some survivors talk about that too, how they were forced to use drugs and things like that by their abuser. April, you're right. It does happen in LGBTQ plus relationships as well. I know we had one of our guests came on and she said when she presented her, it was, her and her girlfriend. And she said when she went to the cops, they said, oh, well, this is just a cat fight between two women, and totally disregarding the fact that there was domestic violence present within the relationship.
Right.
And someone else just said, my newspaper should say I have papers on you so I can do whatever I want to. And so that is just such a false sense of male privilege and identity. Another one with male privilege is tells you that you can't cope without them. That is one of the biggest things. And it's so cliche. No one's ever going to want you. You can't make it without me. Can I just tell you, I'm a living testimony that is a whole lie.
Right.
Okay.
And you will find love again.
You will find love again.
If you choose to, like,
it's a choice. You don't have
to. Choice, exactly.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not telling you that it's going to be easy. I'm not telling you walking away from everything that you love, everything that you know, your entire community of people, starting over, relocating, starting from scratch, starting with nothing. I'm not telling you that's going to be easy.
Right.
I'm not, like in the beginning when I read some of the emails that I had written to Janelle, I'm like, this doesn't feel good. I hate asking you for things. But one day I'm going to survive and I'm going to thrive. Like I was saying that, and I remember thinking all I want to do is thrive after this. And so someone said something in the comments I wanted to touch on. Yeah, it's a whole lie. You can make it. Okay. Let me tell you something. I always say this, I love this line. If I knew that the life that I live now was on the other side of the one that I was living, I'd have left it a long time ago. If I had any clue, like inkling that I could be this happy, without that, oh my God, I would have left it so long ago. And that's why it's so funny because Janelle said to me, she's like, oh, you do this all the time, you go live. I'm like, yes, you guys see me. I love y'all. I love to come on here, but I don't do this because I just love being in front of the camera. I do it because I have to do it. It's my calling. I know it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I know that me using my voice helps to save your life, and I take that very seriously because I always say, Janelle, the night that I left my husband, I was watching a YouTube video and I saw a lady on there talking about being in a domestic violence relationship. She got divorced. She moved on. She got remarried. And I'm watching it like I'm looking at the screen and I was like, what? I didn't know. Like there was this whole thing. That was that boom, that moment where I packed up my kids that night. I left a note on the counter and I left the house. I packed everything that I could fit in the car and I left with my children because that lady, I don't know who she is, and I have no idea if I'll ever know who she is, but it changed my life in that moment. It gave me the hope that there was going to be life after. And I was young. I knew I wanted to get remarried again. It was like this hope, but it wasn't, I didn't have to, but I was young, so I wanted to. Right. And I did, and I was able to enjoy life, and I am able every day to enjoy life after. And so if you're watching, hey Yetzi, Hey, President Lady. So if you're watching this and you're currently in an abusive relationship and you don't know if there's life after, you don't know what to do. I'm a living witness. I'm sitting in front
Yes.
of you. I
Yes.
read to you in the beginning of this session that I was a broken woman. I walked into this lady's domestic violence class and I said, God is going to save my marriage. And she said, okay. 10 years later, I'm sitting in front of you, remarried, whole, healed. This lady sits on the board of Stand Up Survivor. And so my life has done a complete 180. And so my advocate has literally helped to change my life. So if that's a gift that we can do for you, we walk with you through your journey. We want you to be whole. We want you to be happy. We want you to be healed. We want you to know that there is life after abuse. Hey, Yahtzee, go ahead, Janelle. You want to say something?
No, I'm just in awe of you. I'm just in awe.
I really have to agree with you. Some people say that being a victim is so much easier than being a survivor because when you're a victim, you're in that relationship. You know what life looks like. You know the pain of it. You know when they're going to go off. You know what their violence looks like. And being a survivor is hard work. It's crawling through the muck of working through your pain, of working through the reality of what your life is now, of the death of your marriage, of your dream, what you thought it was going to be. But there's still beauty on the other side of that.
Right.
You just have to do the work there.
And also, Lisa, you touched on this a few times, and I just want to reiterate that for the people, you are allowed to mourn the loss of the relationship, because you were expecting one thing and you were putting your whole being into that relationship, really loving that person, and it's not anymore, and you are allowed to grieve. It is a grieving process.
I love that. I love that you said that. And I grieved when I had to get divorced. I was devastated. My parents have been married for 53 years this year. I mean, devastated. I couldn't believe I was getting divorced. I love this man. He was my first love, my first everything. And I had to make the decision to save my life and that of my children. I had to mourn the death of my marriage, mourn the death of the dreams that I had for my family, of raising my children in a household with both their parents. And I mourned it. I don't mourn it no more though, because I realized I don't mourn, because I mourned it and I moved on from it because I realized I had to create a better life for my children, and they deserve to see what a healthy marriage looked like. Because let me tell you something, my children saw that abuse growing up in their home, and I even found in one of the emails I sent you, I was like, I need counseling for my children. I said, because my children have seen too much. My children were terrified. My kids slept with me for a long time after that. And I remember telling them, I said, if y'all don't get out my bed, I'm never going to find me a husband. I need y'all to get out my bed, because they were sleeping with me forever. And I was like,
because they were scared and they were trying to protect their mommy, and that's the thing too, is that children being products of domestic violence has just as a devastating effect as an adult in a relationship of domestic violence, because that is in the mind of the child as they grow through their developmental stages, right? And in the back of their mind, if they never see their mom heal and continue to be in that relationship, they're either going to fall into the same cycle because that's what they know, or they're going to repel everybody and just be like, I don't even want to be in a relationship because I don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. So it is important that if there are children in the relationship, that as a survivor, you acknowledge that they're going through emotions as well that they might not be able to verbalize. Because as adults, we verbalize what we're feeling, let alone children. And so you have to be open to listening to your child and understanding that they're going through what they're going through in that situation.
And I think it's important to recognize too that children do see what's going on in the house. They may not physically see, but they hear, they sense, they know when the tension is rising. So Yeah, please don't
Mhm.
fool yourself. And I did, oh, well, he's not hurting the children, he's just hurting me, so it's okay. The children are the
Right.
same thing. My ex-husband grew up watching the abuse in his home. And so he repeated the cycle. So I had to be the one to break the cycle for my own son. And I said, I don't want my son doing the same thing that his father did, that his father's father did. And for me, it was very, very important to recognize that they see it and that it was up to me to break that cycle. So I
Right.
appreciate your comment, Shadanica, because she talks about it's a huge. I was a battered wife at 13, she said, and it's true because 1 in 3 teens are experiencing or have or will experience domestic violence. That's as much as
Mhm.
women, adult women. That number is huge, and
Well,
so it's
also
important
because
that we educate our
people don't see it
children.
as abuse. They see it as like, oh, he really loves me. Oh, he's just
Yep.
jealous because, he loves me. And I mean, little do they know, again, their children
Yeah. Yeah.
portraying what they've witnessed in their household.
Exactly. I remember I was speaking. February is Teen Dating Violence Month, and I was speaking at a middle school, and the girls were like, "Oh, well, yeah, he checks my text messages before me. He always screens them. Oh, well, the things that they allowed in their relationships were dumbfounding to me as an adult and an
Mhm.
advocate. I thought, no, that's so abusive,
Right.
And I remember this one girl walked up to me, and this is middle school I'm at. She goes, Miss Lisa, I'm so glad you're here because my boyfriend choked me in lunch today. And I'm like, well, she's like, yeah, he put his hands around my throat and he choked me. And I was dumbfounded. And it was another time I was speaking in that same month to some young people and I was describing domestic violence. And this little girl, she raised her hand. She goes, oh, that happens in my house all the time. My daddy does that to my mommy all the time. She
Hmm.
had no idea that it wasn't normal. She had no
Right.
idea that it was abuse and couldn't even put a name to it. So please know that our children are watching, that they see. And kids are like sponges. They don't do what we say, they do what we do.
Right. Right. And that's why you have to allow them to express themselves as well, and have those difficult conversations. For the older ones, for the younger ones, there's ways to talk about it, but for those older ones, those conversations have to be had.
They do. Yeah, they do. And it's a tough one. I mean, my kids hear me talk about it all the time, but I know the conversation, hey, it has to be had. Even as uncomfortable as it needs to be had. So we've been on for over an hour, but I wanted to touch on something real quick. Sometimes, Janelle, as you know, some people say, well, it's not physical abuse because they never hit me. And I remember this is so funny. When I met, not funny, but when I met my ex-husband, he took me to the apartment that he had with his girlfriend, right? And there were holes in the walls. And I remember seeing these holes in the wall. And he has made
Mm,
a statement and he was like, "Oh no, that when he made a statement like just give me an excuse for why the holes were in the wall. I'm
yeah.
19. I'm naive. I am in love." And so he could have said, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay.
All
But
right.
anyway, right? And the holes in walls, meaning, come to find out, he punches holes in walls versus hitting me, the person. So he's plastering my face to hit the wall, right? And so this is still physical abuse. They're breaking things in the house. They're punching holes in walls. They're throwing
Right.
over bookshelves. They're breaking glass. They don't have to put a hand on you for it to get to that point. So I really wanted
Right.
to touch on that. In the beginning of our relationship, we used to live in my parents have like an attached garage that's like converted, and that's where we lived when we first got
Mhm.
married. And he would lock me in the room and pin me down. So he would hold me down. He never hit me, never slapped me, but he would literally hold me down and make me listen to him and force me to say, "I understand. Okay, I understand. You didn't mean it. Whatever." And then like my mom or somebody would knock at the door, and I'd open the door and I'd smile and say, "Hey, what's up?" Right? And I talk and I close the door, and we'd be back right in that back exact same situation. He had never
Mhm.
physically hit me or anything, so I never thought anything of it. So I just wanted to make that point real quick that it doesn't have to be slaps, punches, broken arms for it to still be
Right.
physical abuse.
Well, because and the threat is there, right, Lisa? So like
Absolutely.
him punching that
Absolutely.
wall so close to your face is him saying,
Terrifying.
"This will be you next time."
That's
So
exactly
it's not that he's being physical with you in that moment, but him breaking stuff and the threat and the possibility of that next time that might be my face and not the wall. He knows that. He knows what he's doing. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a way to threaten me and intimidate me because now I'm afraid. I'm terrified. Yeah, I'm terrified at this point because I don't want that next hit to be me. Jennifer, I absolutely agree. I think that every high school, middle school should be taught what domestic violence is and looks like because a lot of these young people think that it's cute when they're being controlled, pushing each other, hitting each other, and it's not, especially in this day and age. You know how many teens are killed by their partners? The numbers are very high, especially college age, 16 to 24. They are the most susceptible age to domestic violence. Another thing we didn't touch on real quick, but threats. When they threaten to leave the relationship, threaten to take the kids away from you, threaten to, this is my one, Janelle, I kill you. No one can have you but me. If I can't have you, no one will. When I tell you, believe them, believe them. Do not take their threats lightly. Do not think that they would never. They absolutely would. You don't know that they would never. Because I remember this one mom I talked to one time, and she shared her story. And she said, the first time that I know that he got physically violent with my daughter is the day he killed her. So when they tell you that they are going to harm you or they threaten to kill you or no one can have you, but I would please believe them and please immediately seek help. Call 911. Get yourself connected with the local agency advocate so that you can help to save your life because believe them.
Yes, absolutely. And with the threats, Lisa, it goes back to there's threats that they make that may not be understood by the outside. So an example, I had a survivor years ago, and every time that he got physical with her, he would take off his ring to punch her, right? And so they went to court. They finally went to court. She was going through the whole process. And he takes his ring off and sets it on the table in the courtroom. Well, to everybody else, that doesn't seem like anything because it doesn't mean anything to them, right? But when she saw that, she just burst into tears because she knew what it meant. So when you say like don't take their threats lightly and tell other people when things like that, like those little things that they do. So that way, if your advocate goes to court with you, you can be looking out for that kind of situation because had we known that previously, we could have alerted the judge. We could have alerted the bailiff or somebody, so it's things like that people don't think about. And so we had to have that conversation with the judges after the fact and explain to them why she was so triggered in court because he made what to us on the outside seems like a simple motion or not even noticeable to her was very frightful.
Wow, that story gave me chills just now because I knew as soon as he took it off in the courtroom, I was like, oh my goodness, that would freak you out because you know what's next. It's their way of, like Rebecca said, it's conditioning. When the ring comes off, they're about to hit you. When this happens, this is about to happen. I remember, I can hide your body, and of course, I believe that. The person who said that in the comments that their partner may have been a police officer. I can hide your body and no one will find it. They say this threat, right? And you're terrified. Oh my goodness. And the next day, I would never do that to you.
Right.
The gaslighting, the manipulation, the conditioning. It's just back and forth. Yeah. It's just this back and forth. But one day, I remember I would have shared that, whatever. We're over. But I remember I was so afraid to take a shower. Right? This sounds really crazy because what he would do if I was in the shower, of course you have the curtain. You can't see the curtain. He would come in there and he would rip the curtain open and just go off, cursing me out, yelling at me, going off. He would, and how more vulnerable can you be but naked in the shower, right? And so I'd be just shaking and hysterical and crying. And I'm like, so when I got on my own, I never had a curtain. I would always have a clear shower curtain. I was terrified for a long time. I didn't have a shower curtain. That wasn't an option. But then when I did move on my own, I had a clear shower curtain because then I could see everything that was coming in and out. And it took me, maybe 6 years before I was able to have a colored shower curtain that covered the clear because that was when I was most vulnerable. That's when he would, when he would come in and try to terrorize me or go off me or something like that. And so I even had to tell my husband, like, I don't like to be surprised. Don't come and pull the shower. I don't like any of that. That doesn't work for me. That's a trick, And it seems silly or like simple, but it's what they do. It's what they do to begin to condition and to instill fear inside of you.
Mm.
Mine tell me saying that if he was in Hitler's, oh gosh, that's terrible, Jennifer. That is terrible. Yeah, I did. I got April. You too. I still take shout. Yeah, because it's one of your most vulnerable places, and so they know the places
Yeah.
and the areas in your life that are super vulnerable, and they utilize and they use it. They use it. Yep. April, yep. That's exactly what happened. That I did that for the longest time. Floor would be soaking wet, wet, and I did not care because I was like, at least I need to feel safe in my own home, in my bathroom. But anyway, yes, the conditioning, I used to know what they were going to fight by the way they walked in the door. So no one knows your abuser like you. So we've
Like you
over time.
totally.
But thank you guys for hopping on with us, hanging with us. Thank you, Janelle. You know, I love you with all my heart. I appreciate you. You are
I love you
my
too.
friend, my forever advocate. I call her my hashtag Shiro. And so I encourage you, like someone said, they didn't like the person who was getting them help. Find someone to walk with you on your journey, who's going to support you, have your back, and push you toward greatness. Because 10 years ago, when I was broken and I didn't know who I was, she told me, she said, don't worry, next year's going to be your year. Don't worry, soon you'll be okay. Don't worry, you're going to make it. And literally, hello, is she a prophet or what? It's true. And
the prophet. I wish. But if we are wrapping it up, can I leave them with this word from Marianne Williamson? Or these words, not just this word, but these words.
Yes, please. And Shan, yes, I'm so glad that you tuned in. You are definitely not alone. Definitely not crazy. Don't believe anything that they said.
Right. You guys are not crazy.
So. Yeah. So Janelle, please, I know you have a beautiful thing you want to read, so please share.
Yes, I just want to share this with everybody. For those of you who are out there that feel like you're in the dark, these are some beautiful words from Marianne Williamson. So our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant and gorgeous and talented and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. So as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So remember that you're beautiful, you're talented, and you have so much to offer the world. You are not the situation that you're in.
I love it. Who is that? But I love it. I love it. I love it. And I believe every word. And I think as women too, we tend to shrink ourselves to make other people comfortable or conform to what people want us to be. Absolutely not. Celebrate your beauty. Celebrate your gifts and your goodness. And soar.
Yes.
Like soar. Who is that by, Janelle?
Yeah. It's Marianne Williamson.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to put it in the comments. Actually, I might share that tomorrow. I have to post that. And
yes,
I'm so glad that you were able to tune in. And I hope you got little pieces of my story here. And I hope that you find, if you desire to find love again, I really hope that you do. It is definitely a beautiful thing. Yes. All right. I'll see you guys later. Thanks, Janelle. Don't go anywhere, Janelle. I will see you guys on Tuesday. We are talking about safety planning and getting you safely free. And so if that is you or you know someone who needs to create a safety plan and get to safety, that's what we're talking about. And we'll see you on Tuesday.
Good night.